Today I would like to review the play Intimate Apparel by Lynn Nottage. The play talks about a 35-year-old single black woman working as a seamstress in the early 1900s and who really wants to find love before it's too late. Then, one day as she receives a letter from this man working on the Panama Canal, George Armstrong, her friends help her send letters back and form this relationship with this man. Now, first of all, I would like to start off by giving this play a 9 out of 10, mainly for its authentic way of writing and portraying people from that era. We see this by the way they live their lives, their jobs, the relationships they have with each other. Speaking of which, I really enjoyed the fact that she mixed people of all sort of social statuses and social groups, such as Jews, blacks, and even whites of high social classes, and then integrated their daily aspirations and dreams with the way they are seen in the society. Speaking of which, one of the parts I enjoyed the most was the open ending that Nottage left to the imagination, but still leaving subtle clues leading us in a certain direction, maybe. Now, to give a little context to what I'm going to say, I said earlier that all Esther, the main character, really wants to do is find love before it's too late. And at first, we think it's George Armstrong, this man who works in the Panama Canal and started writing her letters. But then, as time goes on, he steals from her, cheats, and gambles and loses all her money, which she saved for one of her other dreams, which was building a beauty parlor. And so, with that, once she finally realizes it, the play ends with her and Mame, which is a friend of hers, a prostitute to who she sells intimate apparel to, and who she has grown quite close to. And they're there at Mame's place, and it's George knocking on the door, and Esther's telling him not to come in and telling her not to answer the door. Now, after this, the story ends rather abruptly, but thanks to screen directions, we get kind of a hint as to what Esther will do face to George after this. And we kind of get this hint that they're going to go their separate ways, and she might actually get to do something she enjoys, mainly by the stage direction, which is Esther joins George on stage, each of them in a separate pool of light. Now, this is definitely leaving hope for the people who wanted her to finally get what she wanted and go to Mr. Marks, which is a Jewish man who she has grown quite close to over the years while he's been selling her these different fabrics. Okay, and something I would like to say is that not often in the OIB curriculum do we find these types of short plays where everything is kind of explicitly said or easily understood. For example, in Hamlet, there's always some understatements, or we're supposed to induce something that's not exactly clear unless you've read it a lot of times. Whereas in this one, to me, it was fairly easy to understand. I really enjoyed it, and there weren't many interpretations besides the open ending, and so it was pretty straightforward. And the fact that it so clearly showed the lives of people in the early 19th century almost adds a historical part to the OIB curriculum, which is definitely a bonus compared to some of the other ones. Now that I've discussed my own personal review and thoughts on Intimate Apparel, I would like to discuss what Westport Playhouse said, and more specifically when they talked about the fact that the story was based on her grandmother of Lynn Nottage and grandfather. Now, we know that it is about her grandmother and grandfather because her grandmother was also a seamstress for Intimate Apparel in the early 1900s, as well as her grandfather being from Barbados. And she said that they haven't really told her much, and so it left her to this imagination of this whole story about how they met through letters and developed a relationship from there. Now, this is very surprising to me, given by the kind of sensual feel she gives all throughout the novel and appropriates to Esther, but also it was shocking to me how horrible she makes this character George, who should normally be based on her grandfather. Now, first of all, George, even though Esther hasn't been honest throughout, neither has George, and he's almost lied even more than her, because he kept the charade that he wrote the letters even though he never did. He never wrote the letters, and he cheats on her and steals and gambles and overall puts Esther down and does everything to her that he thinks he can just because they're married now. I have an example of this, which was when he convinces her to give her her money. One of Esther's points was that she saved up for that her whole life, and that it was her dream to one day own a beauty parlor. To that he says, "That funny, you owning a beauty parlor." He never believed in her dreams, and he never really wanted to help with that either. He just wanted to steal what was hers and not even pay attention to her. Now, I said this shocked me before, but I just wanted to say that to me it was even more than shocking, because this is supposed to be her grandmother, and the way that she describes him, he's a horrible person who will do anything to get what he wants, it seems. So it made me question this relationship that he has with his grandfather. And although this is all fiction and there might not even be a problem, it's just for the sake of the story, I was really interested by this and just wanted to mention it before anything else in the documentary, because that's what surprised me the most in the Westport Playhouse discussion. Lastly, I wanted to touch upon the motif of the button, which tends to be a symbol of the tension and feelings between the characters of Esther and Mr. Marks throughout the book, and develops progressively as her story continues. Now, Mr. Marks is the person who sells her the fabric, and they've known each other for a while, and we've felt this tension a lot throughout the novel, but they can't do anything about it because Mr. Marks has strict belief and cannot disobey the rabbinical law. Now, we know there's tension because of many times when they're talking to each other, they compliment each other, they smile, especially over this missing button that Mr. Marks has on his shirt that he always wears. Now, almost every time they speak, we see this mentioned, as he touches the spot where the button is missing, and then he often smiles or compliments her, saying, "You have a lovely smile." Unfortunately, we also see this develop in a way that makes us unhopeful for their future together, because he finally sews on the button after realizing they got married. We know this because of Esther saying, "I'm very happy to see that you replaced the button on your suit," to which he responds, "You noticed. It was time, don't you think?" And that part, don't you think it was time, is kind of a symbol for him saying he should finally move on from Esther. He knows there's no hope because of his rabbinical laws, because of her marriage to George, and he doesn't really think there's any more hope to be with her after all this has happened. Now, later on the story, we still hope this changes, because even after her marriage, she comes to see him one last time, and they still share this kind of sensual tension between them that gives us a hint that it might not be over. Now, although I could talk about this book for hours, I would like to finish by repeating the fact that I would give this book a 9 out of 10 and strongly recommend it to anybody who just really wants to read, or not even at all, because to me, I'm not a huge reader. I read what I have to, and maybe sometimes a little more, but to me it made me want to keep reading it and keep going. And so I really recommend it to anyone who needs a book to read or just has some spare time. And have a good day.